Position your box with the pedal logo facing up. Now, using a sharp edge, start by cutting the plastic straps away from the box. Now take the straight edge box cutter or razor blade and cut the non-stapled side of the box from one side to the other. Continue to cut from the top to the bottom of the box on both the left and the right side. Pull away the exterior layer of cardboard and make the same cuts on the inside layer of cardboard. Use extreme caution while cutting this layer. Penetrating too deeply may cause damage to the contents inside. Once these cuts are complete, you can pull away the cardboard and begin by removing the protective wrap around the bike. Carefully cut the zip ties from the bike. If you use a razor blade to cut the zip ties, just be extra careful not to scratch the product. Once the handlebars are free, you can place them on top of the bike frame. We'll get back to these shortly. Propping the bike up on its own can be a little bit tricky. We found if you take one of the foam cubes from inside the box, you can prop it under the chain wheel and it will secure the bike from falling over. During the unboxing process, you'll find the front wheel, the rear cargo rack, and the front fender. Additionally, you'll find a small cardboard box that contains the following items: pedals, a toolkit, a 21mm wrench, passenger pegs, a bell, extra hardware, and some touch-up paint. Additionally, the battery charger comes in its own box within. We're going to charge a battery next. First, we need to get to the battery, which comes installed on the bike. In order to do that, you'll need the keys, which are located on the front handlebars. Use a scissor to remove the keys and proceed by unlocking the battery from the bike using the longer of the two keys. Reminder, there's two sets of keys. Using any standard wall outlet, begin by plugging your charger into the wall. You'll notice a green light on the power supply turns green. This means that the charger is ready for a battery. Your battery will ship powered off, but just to be safe and to create good habits, double check that the battery is in fact powered off before plugging it into the charger. Once plugged in, the light on the power supply will turn red. This indicates the battery is charging. Remove the hardware from the headset using the provided Allen wrench. Once it's removed, you can take off the front plate from the headset. If you haven't already removed the foam wrap from the base of the handlebars, go ahead and do that now. Once removed, sit the base of the handlebars centered into the headset mount. Now place the front plate back into its original position. Go ahead and hand tighten this, and then take the Allen wrench and securely tighten the handlebars into position. Using the provided 21mm wrench, loosen the lug nuts on both sides of the wheel. The axles have two washers in between the wheel and the lug nut. The washer closest to the wheel is a locking washer, and it should remain closest to the wheel when mounting to the frame and the fork. The other washer should stay on the outside of the axle, in between the bike's fork and the lug nut. Before getting the wheel onto the bike, you'll need to remove a plastic insert from the brake caliper. Now, take note of the shape of the axle. It has two sides which are flat surfaced. This will align with the shape of the bike's dropouts. Carefully position the axles to align with the dropouts before dropping the frame down onto the wheel. The locking washer should be positioned down. If it's positioned up, the wheel will not sit correctly in the dropout. During this process, keep an eye on the brake rotor and the caliper on the frame. You want to make sure that the caliper sits evenly between the brake pads within the caliper. It should also give you guidance as to whether or not you're dropping the bike down onto the frame with the correct angle. Once the wheel is mounted to the bike, take note of the tire and how it is aligned in between the forks. As you hand tighten the lug nuts, make sure to keep the tire centered in between the forks. Once you've hand tightened the nuts, use the 21mm wrench to securely fasten. A cable from the front wheel's motor should be connected to the cable attached to the right side of the fork. Both the male and female sides of the cable have arrows. Align those arrows and connect the cable. Once connected, twist to tighten and secure the connection. The pedals are clearly labeled right and left. The directions right and left are referring to the rider's right and left. So if you're sitting on the bike, it's your left or your right. The pedals can be hand tightened and then securely fastened with the provided wrench. Using an Allen key and the provided wrench, loosen and fully remove the passenger peg hardware from the bike frame. Now place the machine screws into the passenger peg and mount it back onto the bike. Hand tighten the nuts on the inside of the frame, then using the Allen key and provided wrench, tighten it securely. Follow the same steps for both sides. The rear cargo rack is attached to the bike frame from 3 points. The hardware comes pre-installed, so you need to first begin by removing the hardware. The bolt underneath the seat has a nut keeping it into position. Using an Allen key and the provided wrench, loosen and remove the hardware. Now, remove the bolts from both sides of the battery carriage using the Allen wrench. This hardware is threaded into the bike itself, so it doesn't have a nut on the backside. Once all the hardware is removed, you can position the rear cargo rack onto the bike frame. When putting the hardware back onto the bike, start with the longer screw that's fixed with a nut under the seat. For right now, we're just going to keep this half tightened. You'll notice that you can position the rear cargo rack slightly forward or backward. It's based on your own preferences. Once a position is found, attach the remaining hardware and fasten everything down securely. Carefully use a scissor to remove the provided zip ties which are mounted to the rear of the cargo rack. Once the zip ties are free, take the cable coming from the rear taillight and align it with the grooves underneath the cargo rack. You can use the zip ties to fasten them securely. You'll find another cable coming from underneath the bike. This cable will connect the taillight to the main power and control of the bike. Similar to the front wheel motor, align the arrows before connecting the cables. In order to install the front fender, we first need to remove the deadbolt from the front wheel lock. You could do so by using a Phillips head screwdriver found in the provided toolkit. Once loosened, the deadbolt should be temporarily removed. Now that we have access to the front fender hardware, use your Allen key and the provided wrench to remove it from the bike. Once removed, take the front fender and position it over the front and rear holes where we took the hardware from. Once positioned, place the bolt into the rear hole and push through and out the front. Hand tighten the nut on the front end of the bike. Once hand tightened, you can lower or raise the fender to your preference. Once the fender is positioned to your liking, you can use the Allen key and provided wrench to tighten securely. Now mount the deadbolt back into the front wheel lock and refasten the Phillips head hardware. Use the smaller key on the key set to test that the front wheel lock functions properly. Take note of the battery tray groove and how it aligns with that of the groove on the battery itself. Once carefully aligned, push the battery onto the bike. This should feel smooth and not need to be forced. If you're forcing the battery onto the bike, it's likely that the grooves are not aligned. Once the battery is on the bike, you need to turn the battery on. You will find a switch on the bottom left-hand side of the battery. When you turn the battery on, you will hear a sound indicating that the battery is properly mounted and turned on. The orange button on the bottom of the controller is the on and off switch. Hold this button down for 2 seconds to power on the bike.